Hey people, anthropomorphic green slime drop here. I recently released a video on Warhammer and it did very well. Naturally, I thought the best way to keep this momentum going would be to make a video on a game that released 10 years ago and has a peak player base of about 14. Whether this is self-sabotaging behavior or raw artistic passion, even I don't know. Regardless, we're playing Gnomoria. What is Gnomoria? Simply put, it's Dwarf Fortress for people who are too intellectually bankrupt to play Dwarf Fortress. So basically, me. You take command of a small group of gnomes on a mission to establish a thriving kingdom, but in your way stands famine, zombie outbreaks, goblin invasion, and of course, your own stupidity. Maybe you will create a battalion of musket men to rip apart your enemies, or maybe you will forget to clean up your dirt piles and accidentally create an animated dirt golem that crushes your trachea and causes you to suffocate, because that happened to me. A lot. Well, there's only one way to find out, but first, a word from our sponsor. Raid Shadow Legends is back, helping me fend off starvation for at least another month. Today, we're talking about Raid's new limited series, Call of the Arbiter. It's a collection of 5-minute animations that provide insight and lore into Raid's characters and world. You can watch it in-game or on YouTube, and new episodes drop every Thursday. Each episode has millions of views and plenty of positive feedback, and I won't lie, I was skeptical. I thought, this is going to be some silly diaper baby animation for children, but it's actually pretty good. In fact, within the first 60 seconds, I saw a man being eaten alive by an armored pig, and I thought that was very cool. To celebrate the premiere of these episodes, Raid is releasing new champions, extra lore, and several in-game events, so it's a great time to try out the game. In fact, just for logging in for 7 days between now and July 24th, you can get Artak. He's an axe-wielding maniac who moonlights as a professional accountant. And if you've never played, you can also use my link in the description or scan my QR code for 200,000 silver and all of this. Look at that. Even better, you'll get a freaking epic champion, Knight Errant. Very cool. Thank you, Raid. Now back to the video. Here we are, a confused mixture of blue-collar gnomes with an intense desire to not be killed by dirt golems. It's time to design our base, and we have a few potential options. We could submerge ourselves deep underground and become mushroom farmers. However, then we'd have to contend with zombies, skeletons, and a literally infinite amount of beetles. We could stay above ground, but then we'd be raided by goblins several times a month. Final option, we encase ourselves in a 10-foot thick wall of cement and live out our days as antisocial otakus. That actually works great, until the goblins come back with shovels, tunnel into your base, and stab you to death. This is a lesson every Gnomoria player has had to learn the hard way. As far as I can tell, the only option is up. You see, gravity works sometimes in Gnomoria. Rain falls, people fall, but floating islands of dirt do not fall. Very interesting. Hypothetically, if we could create a space elevator all the way to low Earth orbit, we could haul dirt up from the surface and construct a massive platform of land floating hundreds of feet in the sky. Following this, we simply deconstruct our fancy ladder and our base would be impossible to reach, thus making us immune to attacks from sexually aggressive ogres and territorial carpenter ants. If we plan it correctly, we'll be able to sustain ourselves on farmed grains, livestock, and apple trees. Basically, it's utopia, and I am 100% positive that absolutely nothing will go wrong.
Foreshadowing is a narrative device in which suggestions or warnings about events to come are dropped or planted.
We begin with the basics, chopping some trees, planting some crops, and creating a giant stockpile of random garbage. This will be our staging area, our launch pad even. I've gone ahead and surrounded it with walls, and the only way in will be through a mountain tunnel filled with stone doors. Rather than developing a well-rounded society, we will be specializing all of our gnomes into gathering and construction, because we are in a race against the clock to complete our sky fortress before the goblins start systematically beating us to death. Prior to our ascension, we'll need renewable sources of food and water. The best way to manage this is by establishing aerial strawberry patches and high-altitude yak farms. However, living in the sky changes the dynamics of the game substantially, because in the sky, there is a profound absence of absolutely anything. This makes basic building materials such as stone highly coveted, because you can't exactly mine up here. And in an interesting turn of events, perhaps the most valuable resource of all is dirt, because without it, we can't grow anything. Given this, I started a large-scale strip mining operation to stockpile industrial quantities of dirt and precious metals. I even managed to find a handful of emeralds and sapphires, which will be helpful later in the game. While the mining was underway, I started designing our space elevator. Given our modest building materials, I decided to just make a 1x25 ladder of scaffolding straight into the skybox. You can't even see the ground from up here, and God help you if you slip, because fall damage is exponential, and it becomes lethal after about 10 feet. With the ladder to heaven now complete, we need to begin the process of creating our floating platform. I laid out some very basic blueprints, and the builders began hauling the dirt up the ladder and forming the foundation locations of our castle. I'm thinking agricultural wing, industrial, residential, and storage. You might be concerned about the structural integrity of this design, but I'd like to reassure you that I have absolutely no qualifications to be doing this, and I do not care if literally everyone here dies. But that's beside the point. We still have a lot of work to do, and our complete lack of basic amenities has caused our gnomes to become so exhausted they've started falling asleep in the middle of the day standing up. I was starting to feel bad for them, so I compromised by filling a pitch black room with cold hay and calling it a communal sleeping area. By this point, things were going great. We had a sawmill producing plenty of planks, our gatherers were stockpiling an abundance of seeds, and our yaks had even started mating and producing milk. Which is when this happened. An invasion of 3 goblins had been spotted near the entrance to our mountain tunnel. Luckily, only one of them has a sword, and our schizophrenic collection of doors should slow them down. But we need to mobilize the militia fast. Fortunately, I know just the trick. I drafted literally everyone into the military and gave them the following perk. By using this, we can effectively upgrade our group of homeless people into violent homeless people, because Way of the Gnome dramatically increases the attack speed of gnomes who are unarmed. This combat boost effectively turns 1 gnome into 2, and 9 gnomes into 18. I don't know if you've ever fought 18 people at the same time before, but it is a generally unpleasant experience. With the welcoming committee now formed, they set out to conduct a series of gang initiations upon our visitors. The goblins didn't even make it through the front door before 6 of the gnomes had already engaged them with a flurry of punches and kicks. We were outputting so much raw violence that within the first 30 seconds, the main goblin's health status was as follows. The goblin is bleeding from his lower body. The goblin has seriously injured his right eye, upper body, right leg, right foot, left leg, mouth, right arm, and left hand. Oh, and the goblin has fallen over. The first 2 goblins died of collapsed lungs and violently exploded rib cages, which might sound horrific until you realize what happened to the last one. Like some kind of rabid dog, Kimosabe gnawed his way through the goblin's chest and literally ate his still beating heart. In case it wasn't clear, the goblin did not survive. I think we should keep an eye on that guy. Anyway, it's at this point I started to panic a bit, because as funny as it is curb stomping the early game goblins with my psychotic gnomes, it becomes a lot less funny when they start showing up with heavy armor and battle axes. I was rushing to collect enough building and farming materials, and I had even started planting most of my sky crops, because we're not just racing against the goblins, we're also racing against the winter, and if we don't have enough food stockpiled by then, we won't have to worry about being decapitated with battle axes, because half of us will be dead and the other half will be cannibals. Only a few things really happened in this mad dash. 1. I mined at least 8,000 dirt blocks and made a single man carry them up 100 feet of scaffolding using a wheelbarrow. 2. Our yaks left the settlement because I wasn't paying attention. And 3. We were attacked by more goblins. This time the fight was a little less favorable, but it was still very entertaining, because the wheelbarrow guy showed up out of nowhere and started beating the goblins mercilessly with the wheelbarrow. But unfortunately, they did manage to kill 2 of our gnomes before we finally pummeled them into a state of complete cell death. I decided it was time for us to get the hell out of here, and so we hauled the final supplies up the space elevator and sealed off the base. It is now time for us to lift off. However, there's one issue. Someone has to stay behind to deconstruct the scaffolding. I chose Kimosabe because I was worried he might become violently insane and start eating people's hearts again. Anyway, everyone climbed up the elevator, and Kimosabe made the ultimate sacrifice by deconstructing the bottom piece of scaffolding. This caused every piece of scaffolding to collapse at the same time, which culminated in my game crashing. I loaded it back up and successfully managed our launch without further issue. Kimosabe died 4 days later of dehydration despite being surrounded by oranges. You know, now that I think about it, we probably could have just deconstructed the scaffolding from the top. Oh well, life in paradise is now well underway. You may be thinking, Reggie, we've done it. We've created something floating in the sky. Challenge complete? Well, kind of, but not really. Right now, our kingdom is worth about 4,000 value. For reference, the real-life equivalent of 4,000 value is something like a power drill that has been soaked in piss. So I'm setting a goal for us to reach, let's say, 100,000 value. Then we can finally consider this a real sky utopia, and our challenge will be complete. To increase our value, we need to acquire more things. We are the sum of our parts, and right now, our parts are mostly dirt, which has a value of 0, and strawberry seeds, which have a value of 1. In fact, most things have a value of 1. Now, I really don't want to have to farm 100,000 strawberries, so instead, we're going to focus on the fine arts such as jewelry and sculpting. These are high value items, and when placed in our Great Hall, it doubles their worth. So we got to work producing them. Well, a few of us did. Once the base construction was complete and the seeds were planted, 90% of our population was effectively unemployed. They They spent most of their time standing around and rapidly phasing in and out of existence at the dinner table. A real crisis of meaning if I've ever seen one. Maybe life's hardships are the necessary contrast which enables us to enjoy our successes, and without that we're just effortlessly shambling from one day to the next in an unfulfilling malaise. Nah, that's definitely not it. Anyway, I decided to try to keep the gnomes busy with some fun activities. For example, we opened a butchery where I took the goblins from earlier, processed them into sausages, and used the diplomacy screen to send them back to their home kingdom as a gift. Naturally, this infuriated the goblin kingdom, but short of them developing Zeppelin technology, I really don't care. Months passed, and by the middle of summer, our kingdom value had approached 7,500. This attracted new gnomes attempting to join our Sky Society. Obviously, they weren't getting in, and after a few days of being stuck on the ground like some kind of unascended morons, they either died of thirst or were eaten by grizzly bears. But that's okay, because we can't even see them from up here, and in fact, much like some kind of cartoon supervillain, our sky castle is actually blocking out the sun and rain for about 25% of the map. The only issue was I forgot to bring a sewing needle, which makes it impossible for us to manufacture anything at the tailoring bench. No big deal, that only includes clothing, beds, and bandages. Personally, I've always preferred bleeding to death, so it's all good. It was about the middle of fall, farming season was wrapping up, and we were sitting on a stockpile of over 400 strawberries. The industrial wing was still a giant mess, but it was improving, and most importantly, everyone was alive and well. Until this happened. What the fuck? I'm honestly speechless. Apparently, goblin engineers can not only tunnel through dirt and stone, they can also tunnel through quantum space, because they just made a tunnel through the sky and into the middle of my base. So essentially, this means we are playing with all of the disadvantages of living in the fucking sky, and absolutely none of the benefits, because the goblins can just show up whenever they want. This is great. No, really, I love it. I put on a brave face, prepared the military, and unpaused the game, ready to fight for my life against the goblin menace, and then the game crashed. This wasn't a coincidence either. After reloading, I realized that 9 out of 10 times, whenever the goblins reality warped their way into my base, the game would immediately crash. I felt as though the developer was trying to punish me personally for daring to circumvent his game design. Eventually, I was able to stabilize the game, and my reward was a goblin engineer in the middle of my base, who I exercised my frustrations on by beating him into a coma. The goblins are taken care of, but overall, this is a big problem. So let's regroup here. We are in the sky, we have no access to any resource outside of strawberries and a small amount of dirt, and at any moment a tribe of goblins can appear anywhere in our base and attack us. Oh, and the best part is we can't even afford to make bandages because I forgot the sewing needle. Right, okay, you know what, Sky Castle, I think we need a little space. I'm going to make a staircase down and spend a little time on the ground level. I might go mining, maybe I'll even hunt some lizards, but most importantly, I look forward to not having to go to sleep worrying about goblins using quantum entanglement to appear in my room at 4 AM and kick the shit out of me. So let's get out of here. It won't let me build scaffolding. Stairs? No. Ramp. Oh god. We're stuck. We can't build any kind of ladder down since there's nothing beneath us to support it, and that is really bad. Given this information, the prognosis of my colony looks something like this. If we're lucky, we will starve to death, and if we're unlucky, we will slowly be whittled down by successive goblin raids in combination with our lack of basic medicine. I knew there was a solution to this problem somewhere, I just had to do enough drugs to find it. And find it, I did. You see, at the start of every season, we tend to attract 2 or 3 gnomes who try to join the kingdom. Up to this point, we've just been trying to drop pennies on them, but now, they're our only chance at surviving. If we can hold out until new visitors arrive, then hopefully we can use them to build a scaffolding ladder up to the sky to rescue us from ourselves. The only thing that can really stop us is the goblins, so I opened 2 karate studios and had the entire population training literally 24/7. I spent the next few days watching our food supplies slowly dwindle while I listened to the sounds of my gnomes absolutely annihilating each other on an endless loop. Eventually, on day 9 of winter, it finally happened. The goblins came back, but this time we were ready. I want you to imagine being some kind of egghead goblin scientist. You've dedicated your entire life to this strange teleportation technology, no friends, never even touched a woman, just single-mindedly pursued this goal, knowing that one day it will pay off. But the first thing that happens after you use it is you step into my base, get kicked in the head 24 times, and then you are processed into Vienna sausages, because that's exactly what we did to these guys. Exploded heart, crushed lungs, very nice. We spent the next couple days crafting some pillars in an attempt to increase our kingdom value and attract attract some new visitors. And when day 1 of spring finally came around, we hit the jackpot. 4 nomads have arrived. Now they just need to construct a ladder all the way up to us. The only issue is they didn't bring any tools, and without tools, they can't build anything at all. 20 milligrams of Adderall later, we had an updated plan. We have tools up here, axes, pickaxes, all of it. We'll just kind of drop it off the side of the platform, let it fall 100 feet, hopefully it doesn't land on anyone, and then we're good. So I went ahead and tried that. I placed the pickaxe on a floor tile and then had a gnome remove the floor. Unfortunately, this kind of shuffled the pickaxe onto an adjacent tile rather than dropping it. I was really hoping it wouldn't come to this, but this means the only way to drop the tools is to ensure that there are no nearby tiles for them to be shuffled to, which means there has to be only one tile, and if there's only one tile, then the person mining that tile has to be on that tile, meaning that when he removes the floor, not only will the tools plummet 100 feet to the ground, but so will he. I chose Gabriel Colon because much like the Archangel Gabriel, he will be rapidly descending from the heavens to deliver a very important message. I placed the tools at the end of a strip of dirt and had Gabriel slowly mine his way backwards until there was only one tile remaining. Moment of truth, and success! Gabriel has completed the room temperature challenge by skydiving face first into the ground at 99 miles per hour. I'm not exactly proud of my Amazon Prime delivery tactics, but the gnomes got their tools and that's all that matters. Over the next couple days, they started constructing a hideous staircase all the way into the sky. About halfway through, another goblin raid spawned, which I was pretty sure would be the end of this little rescue operation. But the goblins stumbled into an exceptionally aggressive monitor lizard who bled 2 of them out and scared the rest of them off. With that stroke of luck, we were able to complete the staircase to heaven, thus connecting the glorious sky people to the dirty, filthy, disgusting, subhuman ground peasants once more. I don't know if I should be impressed or embarrassed that I managed to accidentally put myself in a Skyblock challenge and solve it all within a matter of a few hours, but here we are. Now don't be mistaken, we're still living in the sky, but we just need an accessible pathway into our base for the goblins. This way they won't have to crash my game every 5 minutes with their negligent misapplications of quantum physics. So what's the plan for defense? Well, pretty much the only thing we have going for us is that we are at a high altitude. So I've decided to spend my entire military budget on developing new and unique ways to push people off ledges, and from there, the fall damage will do the rest. To this effect, I've created a new type of soldier. They're basically just a normal gnome, but they have a tower shield that covers their entire body. Their only purpose in life is to encounter goblins on this 1 tile wide bridge and slam that shield against the goblin's head as hard as humanly possible, hopefully knocking them off the bridge and to their death. Now that our base is accessible and secure, we can also host diplomats from other kingdoms, and if they like what they see, they'll send a merchant for us to barter with. The diplomat arrived and he needed a room to stay in, so I gave him our penthouse suite. Technically, there is a dead body in the bed, but I'm really banking on him not noticing that. Another thing I'm hoping he doesn't notice is the goblins that are currently having their skulls caved in on the bridge just beneath his room, because we have just been attacked again, but thankfully the shield squad is on it. I was hoping they'd be pushing the goblins off the bridge, but instead they're pretty much just using their 90-pound shields to crush every bone in the goblins' bodies. Except for this guy. He had too much armor on, so instead they just slowly pushed him back further and further until... Nice. That, my friends, is proof of concept. Now it's time to get serious because our kingdom's value is absolute garbage. In fact, if you asked ChatGPT to generate an image on what a kingdom with 15,000 value would look like, it would give you a picture of dog feces that had been hit several times with a sledgehammer. And it wouldn't be wrong. Previously, we've been increasing our kingdom value with cheap necklaces and fancy floor tiles, but it's just going too slow. And I'm not sure how much longer the colony can survive my poor planning and proclivity towards human sacrifice. So to expedite this process, we need more precious metals. Gold, silver, platinum, anything I can use to make gaudy jewelry and artificially inflate the value of our quote-unquote utopia. I sent the gnomes back into our previous mine, which by this point had become infested with skeletons and zombies. Fortunately, we managed to use the tower shields to form a bully circle around them and crush them like some kind of man-powered hydraulic press. Anyway, the digging continued and we used a series of torches to reduce our risk of spawning more enemies. Eventually, we hit a large amount of malachite, which we could use for new weapons and armor. Even deeper still, at about minus 50 blocks, we lucked out by hitting a silver vein. After mining it and hauling it to the base, we managed to smelt it down and mold it into a series of solid silver statues. By installing these in the Great Hall, it increased our kingdom value to about 50,000. Unfortunately, this bump in kingdom value enticed another goblin assault, and despite our new weapons and armor, the ogre they brought was literally picking people up and throwing them off the bridge. This probably goes without saying, but they didn't survive. The only good thing was that one of my soldiers used his claymore to inflict some serious bleeds on the attackers, and after they were finished tossing my entire military to their death, they decided to retreat. It's pretty clear that not only are the wheels falling off the car that is our kingdom, but the engine is on fire and we're suffocating from carbon monoxide poisoning. We need more value so we can complete the challenge, delete the world, and pretend this whole social experiment never happened. In order to achieve that, we need to go deeper and fast. I drafted the entire population into the mines. That might sound cruel, but much like children, their small frame and soft bones make them very effective at squeezing into small tunnels, and they shouldn't have evolved this way if they didn't want to die in the coal mines. So we went deeper, minus 70 blocks deep. Being this far underground is a lot like swallowing pills you find on the sidewalk. It's very dangerous, but also potentially very rewarding. Fortunately, we were rewarded because I found a few gold veins running through this cavern. I mobilized my child mining company and we tunneled our way over and excavated everything we could. From here, we need to move fast because the next goblin assault will almost certainly wipe us out. Luckily, we were able to melt the gold down and process it into a series of golden statues valued at approximately 5,000 points each. Following installation, I checked our kingdom worth and we had officially passed 100,000. That's right boys, utopia has been achieved. Sure, there are countless dead bodies decomposing in my base, I had to shut down all agriculture, and 90% of my gnomes are about 30 seconds from dying of thirst, but maybe that's just what paradise looks like. I mean, it's hard to argue with the numbers. Anyway, this challenge took a series of left turns that have probably caused me to develop a life-threatening aneurysm, so I am getting the hell out of here. I want to thank this month's patrons for supporting the video, big shout out to my friend Sev for his creative input, and finally, thank you for watching. Also, big thank you to Raid Shadow Legends. You can download the game using the pinned comment below for plenty of bonus items.